En el marco de las formaciones dadas en género y desarrollo para África y América Latina que implementa el IHID, hemos desarrollado una colección de 6 videos para facilitar la implementación de la malla de género, que es una herramienta realmente poderosa para la transformación social y la implementación del enfoque de género en los proyectos y programas de desarrollo. Les invitamos a descubrirlo.
Taking sanitation as an entry point, the OVERDUE project sought to understand why gender inequality keeps on being perpetuated on a daily basis across African cities. The web of institutionalization, developed by Professor Caren Levy, was a critical resource in that respect. It helped us, on the one hand, to understand the key power points where these inequalities are rooted, but also to find ways of developing actions and strategies that can transform these inequalities. We are now really thrilled to see that the experiences of 4 of the 7 cities that took part in the project are being used to show how the web of institutionalization works. This is how it works in terms of diagnosis, but also as a critical feminist tool for action and research.
Qu'est-ce que la toile de l'institutionnalisation?
In general terms, the web of institutionalization is an analytical framework to assist the development of research, policy and planning to address equality and social justice. The web of institutionalization was first developed in the 1990s to address the process of mainstreaming gender equality. In other words, to build up a lens of a way of understanding gender equality in a particular development context and focusing on particular planned interventions. As an analytical framework, it aims to achieve this in 3 ways. The first is to diagnose how far equality and social justice has been advanced in research or in the particular intervention that is being examined. The second, and an extension of the diagnosis, is to define the room for maneuver for collective action to promote equality and social justice. The third is to operationalize collective action to construct pathways to equality and social justice. It's important to say that underpinning the web of institutionalization, in other words, the web of institutionalization is embedded in a recognition of intersectional power relations. That is the intersection of class, gender, age, religion, ethnicity, disability, and sexuality. And the way these are reflected in the interests that underpin development practices in different contexts and that drive the reproduction of inequalities in development trajectories. The web is also underpinned by the position that even within the context of the powerful conflictive forces driving these inequalities, it is possible under particular conditions to collectively construct pathways towards equality and social justice.
De quoi la toile est-elle constituée?
Based on these theoretical assumptions, the web identifies 13 sites of power, what I call elements, and the relationship between them. In this sense, the web is a network of key sites of power that are crucial in the construction of pathways towards equality and social justice. These elements are grouped into 4 intersecting spheres: the citizen sphere, the policy sphere, the organizational sphere, and the delivery sphere. The web recognizes that the form that these spheres and the 13 sites of power take and the relationships between them are context specific. It acknowledges that these elements involve different actors working individually or collectively or even in opposition to each other, each with different spheres of influence, And indeed, these 13 elements and 4 spheres are often differently interpreted by these different actors. By exploring these sites of power in situ, it's possible to assess the problems and opportunities that are confronted in these 4 spheres and in the relations between them. And based on this, the room for maneuver for transformative action can be assessed and strategies can be identified to collectively construct what I call routes through the web, or pathways to equality and social justice. I created the web of institutionalization in the first half of the 1990s, at a time when I was working with practitioners in donor agencies, governments, NGOs, and advocacy groups. This was a time when the notion of mainstreaming women in development was gaining acceptance, adopted at the Third World Conference on Women in Nairobi in 1985. Our work challenged the Women in Development, WID approach, and argued for a gender in development, the GAD approach. By 1995, at the Fourth World Conference on Women held in Beijing, there'd been a shift from mainstreaming women to mainstreaming gender in development.
Pourquoi avoir créé la toile de l'institutionnalisation?
I developed the web in response to 2 related challenges. The first was a question that I was constantly confronted with from practitioners participating in our capacity building programs. They often asked me, okay, I support gender equality, but how do we mainstream gender equality in our practice? The second and related impetus for the development of the web was the absence of any conceptual or methodological frameworks to address gender equality at what I call the meso level. What do I mean by this? Well, by the 1990s, there was a wealth of experience at the micro level in relation to consciousness raising in communities, in campaigns for equality and political representation and in the workplace, and in relation to analyzing development projects, largely in the context of foreign aid. There was also a wealth of experience at macro level in 2 different but related dimensions, in the expansion and deepening of feminist theory, supporting the rationale and principles of feminist practice, and a growing experience in gender mainstreaming in policy making at the policy level. However, the linkages between the micro and the macro levels remained a black box. This was the level of institutions, organizations, and governance practices, which linked micro with macro actions, and which focused on the relationship between sites of power in institutions, organizations, and their governance. In the web, the 4 intersecting spheres, and within them the 13 sites of power and relationships between them, is a means of linking the micro, meso, and macro levels in a way that will advance equality and social justice. In a next step, I proposed an approach to strategy development, which itself has undergone many iterations over the years, particularly based on my experience of working with networks of community-based organizations and with community-led policy planning and program work that we've done together.
Comment utiliser la toile pour la recherche féministe?
The web can and has been used to inform feminist research in 2 main ways, in its content and in its application. In its content, it's done this through focusing on the key sites of power permeated by intersectional patriarchal values and practices. And the web helps to identify the way gender inequalities are constructed in these sites of power. And it helps to identify the resistance to change and the opportunities to challenge inequalities. A preliminary analysis of each of the 13 sites of power and the 4 spheres that embrace them helps to define the study populations, the units of analysis, the knowledge and information gaps, and thus it helps to generate research questions. Let me turn to the application of the web in feminist research. The element I always start with in the web is women and men's experience and their reflexive interpretation of reality. This is a clue to two important aspects of feminist research. The first is that feminist research is grounded in the experience of women and of men in all their diversity, recognizing the power imbalances and means of exploitation between women and men, between women and the institutions and organizations that affect their lives, and in the context of research, between researchers and the population that they're focusing on in their research. Second, feminist research is reflexive in its practice. That is, in the process of doing research, it's a form of self-reflection that questions the intersectional patriarchal biases of the researchers, whoever they are, the biases in the methodologies used to collect data, and the biases in the fields in which the topics are located. This means when applying the web, it's most powerful when working in partnerships with equality, with a range of partners in civil society, the state, and the market, as appropriate to the research topic. It results in a reflexive formulation of strategy and or routes through the web, and also builds in a strong commitment to change amongst the actors involved in the analysis of using the web. For example, communities working with local government actors.